What's up, you beautiful bastards? This is your host, Captain Zach DeFranco, and today's subreddit is r/EntitledParents. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story's called Update, but the baby! Okay, hopefully this post won't get removed, but I have an update. Since this doesn't fit in just no mother-in-law, I thought I'd post it here. I have an update. Boy, howdy do I have an update. First, quick recap for anyone who didn't read the first go-around, because they can't since it got taken down. My neighbor's mother-in-law told me her daughter was expecting a stork delivery next year and demanded that I either get rid of my cats or she'll get rid of them for me, and I threatened to bury her if she touched a hair on their fuzzy little heads. It might sound extreme, but you weren't here last summer. On to the update. First of all, I followed the lovely, thoughtful advice of several commenters and talked to the police. Now, I didn't file for a restraining order. What happened was the chief, small town, came into my work for a coffee. We have free coffee for on-duty officers, and everyone knows that I clean the machines and make sure the creamers are stocked, and I explained. I did not mention that she threatened my cats, because he's old school and an animal that doesn't work isn't worth anything, but I did mention that she's been standing outside and screaming at me when I go for my morning run, which is right after I get off work, and that it's making me very uncomfortable. I also explained that I didn't want to formally do anything, because I didn't want to hurt neighbor or pregnant neighbor. He nodded, called me 6 kinds of idiots. I can't remember who said I shouldn't set myself on fire to keep them warm, but he repeated it almost verbatim and told me he'd talk to them in an unofficial capacity as long as I promised to file in an official capacity when crap goes downhill. So, Christmas night. One of the officers stopped by my work to tell me what happened in the wide-eyed awe that you could only get when you witness something you just can't believe happened. First, the chief, with an officer as backup, told the family, neighbor, pregnant neighbor, and mother-in-law that I was nervous with the way she kept yelling at me when I went on my morning runs, and that after what happened last summer, I have every reason to be nervous. This woman throws a tantrum. She starts screaming, stomping her feet, picked up a piece of the nativity set, and threw it at the chief. I gaped when the officer told me this. For context, this is a deeply Christian area, and messing with the nativity is almost sacrilege around here. So the chief, having had enough, and not caring one bit for rude, entitled people, arrested her for assaulting a police officer. She went to jail and has seen the error of her ways. Okay, no, she didn't. When I got off work yesterday, neighbor and pregnant neighbor came to meet me in tears. She told them that she'd bought their mortgage and she was going to evict them if I didn't drop the charges. The charges, I would like to remind you, that I did not press. I just stared at them in astonishment for a good 5 minutes before my brain rebooted. Told them to talk to the bank, explain that someone is claiming to have bought their mortgage, and ask if it's true. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Now, that would have been bad enough, except that the bank manager they spoke with happened to be Jay, for the sake of anonymity, and because I'll always have a fondness for the men in black. Jay is a notorious gossip. She can't pass 5 people without telling all of them every detail of her day. So when she learned that not only did someone claim falsely that a mortgage had been bought, not only did someone threaten them with eviction, which apparently only the bank can do if they didn't do something, but that person was the mother-in-law? Wow, I'm surprised her flapping lips didn't herald a wind advisory. And I do mean that in the best possible way. If you're reading this, love ya, Jay, never change. Even if she gets off with a slap on the wrist, not likely. Our chief has many memorable qualities, but he does hold a grudge. She can't even get a bail hearing because her lawyer has to appeal for an interjudicial judge. I think that's what it's called when you get a substitute judge, because all 3 of ours are on vacation and the earliest ETA is January 3rd. Oh, and the bank, the one the mortgage was through, is also pressing charges, because it's illegal to claim you own a mortgage that you don't? Oh, and her name is Mud in our town. Welcome to life in a small town, bench. Okay, well, we don't really know what the initial story was, however, this woman is as entitled as it gets. This story's called Entitled Mother Thinks Age and Height Are the Same Thing? Hi everyone! I'm extremely new to Read It and never thought I'd use it for anything, but I thought I'd share an experience that I've had with an entitled parent. I live in Los Angeles and have a passion for working in theme parks. I've worked at Disney, Universal, and Pacific Park, the pier with the roller coaster and the Ferris wheel in GTA 5 for people who are unfamiliar with the LA area. This story is only one out of the literal over 30 I have with working in this industry for so long, so if you all want more, I'll gladly share. This is from when I was working as a ride operator at Pacific Park for a small children's ride that was probably the most tame and boring ride in the whole park. Luckily, it's not there anymore because that ride was the most painfully slow to operate, especially if it's an 8-hour shift. So when kids actually came up to the ride, I loved to interact with them as much as possible to make time go faster. The ride was meant specifically for children and there was a height limit. For this ride, it was 42 inches. This is a very common thing in all theme parks. In the chance that they were too short, I'd politely take the parents and the kids aside a little to explain the reason their child can't go on the ride. Sometimes they were upset, but not as insane as this one woman I had to deal with. Once you work at parks for a while, you can just tell from almost 10 feet away if a child is too short for the ride you're operating, and when this mother with a child that hardly even reached her knees started to walk over, I knew instantly I'd have to turn them away. She sits on a bench a little ways away from the ride and lets her child run over to the line. There wasn't anyone else in line or on the ride, so I was able to give him all my attention right away. I got on my knees to his level and he tried to zip it right past me and open the chain to let himself into the ride. Without touching him, I moved my arms around him and directed him away from it, holding onto the chain so he didn't unhook it as I said, Whoa, hold on there, buddy. I need to make sure you're tall enough to ride, is that okay?" He nodded and gladly pushed his back up against the measuring wall. He was at least 5 inches below the line. I put my line where his head is, asked him to step away to look at it for himself, and show him why he can't ride. After I explain, I can tell he's a little sad. So I said, "But hey, you know what? I'm pretty short for my height right now. At the time, I was 20 and only 4'10". When I was your age, I was all the way down here. I pointed to only a few inches on the measuring wall near the floor. He smiled and laughed. After talking some more, I told him to go let his mom know why he can't ride. He walked over to her and after talking a bit, she immediately shot a glare my way. I took a deep breath, preparing to use my super nice customer service voice. I smiled happily as she walked over to me, holding her child's arm. Conversation went as follows. "Did you tell my child he can't ride on this?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm very sorry, but he is a little too short for the ride." "He is 12 years old. He should be fine." This kid looked at the most 6 years old. His age has nothing to do with it. It's his height. I pointed to the measuring wall showing the 42-inch requirement. "He is way older than that. He can ride this if he wants to." I gave her a confused look and glanced over the sign. "This doesn't have an age requirement on it. It's the height requirement." "I know that. I can read. I'm trying to tell you he can go on this." "And I'm trying to explain he is too short for this." She doesn't listen and reaches for the chain to lift it up, pushes the kid forward to go under it and into the ride area. I quickly move my hand in front of him to block his path because honestly, that can be potentially dangerous if he goes on the open track like that. I ask him to come back and bring him safely under the chain again. I tell him to stand next to the measuring wall to show her what I'm talking about. "See, he needs to be at or above this line for him to ride it. He is almost 5 inches below it." "But I paid for this ride. I paid for him to ride it. He needs to ride it." "I'm sorry, he can't." She scoffs at me and grabs her son's arm. "Fine, then what ride can he go on?" "Honestly, he won't be able to ride any ride at all. All the children's rides are at 42 inches and they won't let him, just like me." "So you're telling me I wasted my money on this stupid park that my child has been dying to go to his whole life?" I shake my head in sympathy. "I'm sorry." At this point, I was expecting her to say, "Then give me a refund," or even maybe, "Then let me speak to your manager." But she didn't. She just glared at me, picked up her child, and walked off. I thought that was the end, but oh no, it was just getting started. She goes to sit on the bench for a while and waits for about 30 minutes or so. The park was really empty, but there was one family who was hitting up all the children's rides and they came over to me. I get them situated on the ride and everything is going smoothly. I glance over to the entitled mother to see if she was still there, and she wasn't. I felt that was really suspicious, so I looked around more and saw her getting in line for another kid's ride with the same height requirement. Except this time, she was holding the child in her arms to reduce suspicions of him being too short. I quickly opened the little phone box we have at each ride to communicate with other coworkers, and called the ride she was in line for. Unfortunately, I wasn't fast enough and he already let them into the ride so she can buckle him in before answering my call. Once he picked up, I said, "Hey man, I'm really sorry to say this, but the Karen you just let on with that little boy? Yeah, he's not tall enough to get on that. He's like 5 inches under. I know our manager is going to be making rounds soon and I don't want you to get in trouble." He thanked me, told me he'll check, and hung up. I was trying to focus on the ride I was operating and wasn't able to hear what might go down at the other ride at that moment. As my ride ended, I quickly helped the kids off safely and gave my attention back to the other ride. The kid was already buckled into the ride and the entitled mother was standing next to him screaming at my coworker. This is where I started listening.
That's bull crap. That doesn't mean anything. My baby's 9 years old. He's old enough to do whatever he wants.
I know. I'm just asking to see his height before we can safely let him ride.
I don't care. It's his birthday. Just let him ride the ride or else I'm going to fire you.
My coworker was doing his best to try to calm her down and explain more than he already explained. So I decided to call my manager over before they could to make things easier on my coworker. As I'm doing this, she glances over to me and gasps.
You're calling security on me? I can't believe this.
My coworker gives me a thankful look, and I just calmly explain the situation to my manager as quickly as possible. We hang up, and I continue listening to the entitled mother yell and scream at my poor coworker.
We aren't leaving. I paid to be here.
She was yelling this as my manager came over to help them. "What's the problem, ma'am?"
You're disrespectful. Employees are kicking my baby out of this ride.
He doesn't meet the height requirement by almost 5 inches.
That's not true. He's 10 years old.
Oh, okay, well, can I see if he's too short? And if he really is over the height, then he can ride the ride. But if not, we can't let him.
No, you can't. It's his dream to ride this ride, please.
Ma'am, please stop yelling. All we can do is see if he's tall enough. If you continue to act like this, we will have to escort you out.
You wouldn't dare. You touch me or my son and I'll sue you for sexual assault, you child lover.
My manager wasn't having it. He took out his walkie-talkie and called security. As they came to get them, she screamed and begged them to stop. Her child was gently escorted out. The whole time she was yelling,
I can't believe you would do this to a pregnant woman. To a white, pregnant woman.
I didn't think she looked pregnant, but who knows? If she was, maybe her hormones were out of control to the point of becoming hysterical about a small $10 children's ride for her son who didn't even care about going on it or not. I still think about her today and wonder how that kid might be now. Hopefully nothing like his mom. Okay. I'm sorry, but that last thing he said was like, if she was pregnant, maybe her hormones were out of control. You don't say crap like that, dude. That's like when those dudes, those sleazy guys on TV or something, they're like, oh, we can't have a woman president. They're like, their hormones. That's just funny. I know he probably didn't mean anything bad by that, but it's just funny. Also, I kind of felt sympathetic at first for the kid, obviously, he's too short. But I was like, I kind of understood where she was coming from because if he was 12 and under 42 inches, I could understand why she'd be like, oh, come on, he's 12. But yeah, then she lost me. This story's called Entitled Dad Mad He Was Not in Front of Us in Line. My mom and I went to the grocery store to buy some food for my brother before he went for university, and once we were done, we head for the line. Around this time we got there, a dad, entitled dad, and what I assumed was his daughter, nice kid, were walking to the same line as us. Just as they got closer though, my mom and I made it right before them into the line. Note that they were not as close as we were when we were walking to the line. We were closer and got there before them. There was only one line today, and so things were going slow. Until another cashier opened. My mom noticed and began to go there, not before entitled dad had some things to say about us to his daughter. "Oh look, a cashier opened up, let's go."
Dad, those people came before us. Let them go.
"But they cut us in line." He was whining when he said this.
No, they were first.
At this point, my mom gave them a glare before giving the stuff to the cashier. As I was trying to get the stuff, I didn't have any room to get everything from the farther side of my cart since we were squished into the 2 cashier tills. We asked entitled dad and nice kid to move their cart away so we can move our cart out and I can get the remaining groceries. But entitled dad just rudely said no, and nice kid tried to convince her dad to just move a little. So I managed to squeeze through the cashier tills to get to the remaining items. As I was packing the groceries, I can just hear the entitled dad complain about us taking up the whole damn area to pack groceries, even though I stayed on the side to put everything away. Oh, come on. You know what? At least try not to act like you're having a Freaky Friday situation. Jeez. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.